Have you uh, have you ever noticed there's a lot of weariness in the world? Maybe you've noticed it in yourself too, have you not? Um, we can take physical weariness. I mean, I don't know, guys, maybe you like working out, and at the end of it, you're totally drained. Women too, I mean, it's fine. You feel totally drained, but you feel good. You feel good. But mental weariness and spiritual weariness is a lot different, isn't it? I mean, it zaps you, and there's really not a real feeling good afterward. Most of us carry that kind of weariness. For some, it's the sense really of never measuring up. You've never felt like you really measured up. For others, it's the multitude of demands that come on you. Now, I remember when I was at West Point, you'd be standing there and I'd have 5 guys yelling at me. And I learned the secret is you paid attention to the one that yelled what? The loudest. There it is. That's no way to live in a prolonged sense. And maybe you're at the point where you're living that way with the demands and the people that give those demands in your life. For others, it's a sense of failure. They're weary from the same thing, the same time, one more time, the same failure, the same failing, the same thing you've done, one more time, and it just drains you. For some, it's the feeling you never fit, and you're just tired. Tired of trying maybe to be something else or to be something for someone else, and you never really fit. Weariness is huge, and the key question is, I think, is there really ever any rest for the weary? Haven't you asked that before? I played that video for a real reason, because there is rest for the weary, and we know it. And Jesus in Matthew 11 nails it when he says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will" what? "Give you rest." Doesn't that sound good even today? "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart. You'll find rest for your souls," that inner part that so needs rest. "For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." And I want to tell you something about the Bible. We believe this is God's word. This isn't just advice for you. I stake my life, and as followers of Jesus, we stake our lives that this is true. That there is rest for the weary, that it is bound up in who? Jesus. And so what I want to do is just look at a couple of questions as we explore this and how we can just fully know that rest that he gives. The first one is, who can come to Jesus? Because sometimes I do it that way. I go, okay, if coming to you means rest, and I've been trying to follow you for years and I still don't know rest, maybe I'm not one of those that can come to you. Maybe I've blown it so much, I've done so much that it just doesn't work for me anymore. Maybe I've been X'd out. Come on. Rachel and I had a good friend up in before we moved here in South Carolina, and she would do anything for you if you were her friend. She would go bend over backwards and do stuff, but when she X'd you out, you were X'd out. That was it. Some of us project that onto God, do we not? And we honestly feel that way. So what are the qualifications that you have to come to Jesus? What are they? Do you have to be right? Do you have to be perfect? Do you have to have cleaned yourself up to come to Jesus? The Bible would say no, right? Absolutely not. Romans 3:9-10. We've already made the charge that Jews and Gentiles, which was the entire world, are all under sin. Any of them clean? No one righteous, not even one, period. So it can't be that your life's clean enough or good enough to come to Jesus, or he'll X you out. So maybe it's, as a matter of fact, if that was the case, who would come? No one, right. We got that nailed. Do we have to keep the law right? Do we have to get it all, nailed right there, or at least try to do well, or do I just need to do better than, I picked on Rodney already, Rodney. If I just do better than him, God won't send us both down. Is that what it is to come in? The answer is no. You know that. The answer is no. Again, in Scripture in Galatians 3, it says, before this faith came, we were held prisoners by the law, locked up until faith should be revealed. So the law was put in charge to lead us to Christ, that we might be justified by faith. Here's the take, the way the law works for you is the law shows you how dreadful you are. That's what it does. It exposes our motives, our actions, our hearts. And when we look at the mirror of God's perfect word, there's no one, as we've already seen, that says, I look pretty good. What it does is it makes us go, oh crud, I've got to do something about this. And you don't run to Walgreens to buy the, eraser or base or whatever the stuff is to make yourself look better. You got to go to Jesus. It's the schoolmaster to lead you to Christ. The law is the thing that does that. So it's not just keeping the law better than Rodney. It's because we can't. The place of the law was to lead us to Jesus. Jesus does lay out some qualifications, though, and one of them's in the Sermon on the Mount at the beginning of it. In Matthew 5:4, he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. He's not telling people they're blessed if they're poor. Any of you poor? Or do you feel blessed? Sometimes you feel, well, you do. Sometimes you feel there's one more bill to pay, right? It's hard to live that way. He's not saying that. What he's saying is, blessed are the poor in spirit. And these are the people that have tried. They've engaged. They've tried to live this life, and every time they feel empty. They feel like they don't have what it takes. They can't do the one more thing. As a matter of fact, the things they've been given oftentimes we're not doing right. And so the poor in spirit are those who've tried their own resources to live this life, to honor God, to do whatever, and they find out they can't do it. And when you reach that point, that's where Jesus says, you're right there at the door. Blessed are the poor in spirit, because you know what? When you get to that point and you see your inability, you're going to start looking for the one who's got the ability, aren't you? And the only one that's got that is who? It's only God. Paul, a former Pharisee, trusted in his own righteousness, didn't he? As a matter of fact, he was holding coats while they stoned Stephen, the first martyr, Christian martyr. He got letters to go pursuing Jesus' followers in nearby regions to throw them in prison and hopefully, I think, kill them. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. You thought he had it all together. But later on, he wrote something that I think is very telling about his understanding about who can come to Jesus. In Romans chapter 5, he said this, you see, at just the right time when we were still powerless, Christ died for the ungodly. So you want to know who's qualified? Who are the ones that can come to Jesus? The way I read the Bible, it's the ones who have been ungodly. And it's the ones who realize it, and they're poor in spirit, and maybe that weariness is there because of their emptiness and their inability. If you think you're okay at this point, quite frankly, you're not one who's ready to come to Jesus. Being very honest with you. If you're smug and you think you can do it on your own and that you've got it nailed down, you're not one of those who's going to find the rest of Jesus, because you're not looking for it. You honestly think you've already arrived, and if you look at the Bible, who are the ones that Jesus had the biggest problem with? The ones who thought they'd arrived. Because what they're doing is covering up an emptiness with their own bag of achievements and beliefs and all of this. Coming to Jesus also isn't just a mental checkbox where you go, yes, I believe this, I believe this, I believe this. It's not. Those who follow Jesus and those who know his rest are the ones who are absolutely worn out. They're weary of trying and failing. They're weary of demands that they honestly can't meet. They're the ones who try and fail again. And then get up and try, and guess what they do? Fail again. And then they get up and they try, and what do? Fail again. These are the ones who are weary, and yet they have a smoldering little wick of hope that tells them there's something more and something greater. And that's what makes them get up again, period. Jesus is there for those who are weary and heavy laden. He lays that out, does he not? So then what in the world does it mean to come to Jesus? We've heard it explained how many ways in America. You walk the aisle. You get baptized. You give so much money. You do that. You come to church 3 times a week. We don't even have services 3 times a week, but if you want to be coming to Jesus, you got to be here 3 times a week. We'll give you a key. You know, that's what you've heard it explained all these ways. What in the world does it really mean to come to Jesus? There's some familiar verses out there. John 3:16 says, "For God so loved the world." If you've been around church a long time, you almost know this verse, do you not? He gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. So belief in Jesus is key, right? There's another verse similar to this in Romans chapter 10. In Romans it says, if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So belief, saying it, knowing it here. And yet I want to tell you something. If we understand those verses like they're preached in an awful lot of churches, then Satan's going to be in heaven. And the demons are going to be in heaven. Because Satan and the demons knew who Jesus was. They wouldn't bow the knee to him as Lord, but they would confess that he was the Lord. They knew it in their heart better than you do probably that Jesus was who he said he was. They just did not at all act on it, did they? So it's not just, see, in America, we've separated belief from action and belief from your core value. I can believe something and it not affect my life at all. And according to the Bible, when we say we believe in Jesus, it affects everything about me, everything about my priorities. It changes everything. When I believe, when I confess with my mouth and believe in my heart, it's not just empty words and a feeling that comes and goes, sort of like when you have a bad Indian food or good Indian food. It's a feeling that comes and goes, but it's something that changes your life, period. And so what it means to come to Jesus, he lays it out in this verse we're looking at, in these verses. He goes, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart." And we don't like to talk about taking a yoke, do we? I mean, you know, what's a yoke? We don't use anybody here use a yoke at work? Didn't think so. You've had pictures of what they are. You see the double yoke with the ox, and you knew that they did that to work in the fields back before John Deere was around. That's what they did. And the idea of submitting your neck or your life to somebody else's yoke, that's un-American. Come on, we got the "Don't Tread on Me" flag on the back of your truck. We serve no sovereign here was one of the That was one of the things in the American Revolution that was a saying and a motto: we serve no sovereign here. Look at all the fascination with Queen Elizabeth's death. We've changed. But, we have that kind of attitude. It's almost un-American, but it is a yoke. And Jesus tells us that if we want to know rest, we've got to, instead of submitting ourselves to everybody else's yoke and even our own yoke that is burdensome, we need to submit ourselves completely to His. And how much of your effort does Jesus want when you submit to His yoke? All to Jesus I surrender. We need to rewrite that song. Like 75%, 10%'s good for the IRS, right? No, 20%'s good. Well, we'll see. All to Jesus. That's what it is. And it's submitting yourself to his yoke. It's saying basically, not my way. I've tried my way, God. I've tried all the time, and it's just every time. Not my way, it's your way. And so I'm submitting to that. Period. And when you submit to that, who are you teamed with? Jesus. I got to confess, when I was in school, I hate, and in work now, I hate team projects. I detest them. Because in a team project, what happens? They get a group of you together, group of 5, 3 of them do nothing, you do all the work, and somebody else takes all the credit. And that's the way it is. I hate them. Jesus must feel that way, because when we're teamed with Him, who does all the work? And who wants all the credit? We do. What it means to be teamed with Jesus is to come to Him and be yoked to Him, not your church, not your friends, not your family, but the one who does all the work. The one who overcomes every obstacle. The one who we sang about, can he ever fail? Never, never fail. Period. But it is a yoke. And it's not your way. And the second thing he tells us to do is learn from him. Then what a wonderful thing. We have somebody that we're not only tied to, but somebody who takes the time to teach us. Jesus, I want you to know this. He expects failure from you. He expects you to stumble, even if it's your 10,000th time, with the same mistake. But he also wants us to look to him and to learn. He is our example. Guys, we're doing a Learn Jesus is one of our core things, and we're doing that Mondays on the Bible study if you can come. And it's slow, but we're hoping to capture more about who he is and have that change us. That's what we're doing. Personal illustrations here, just a couple of places where learning from him has made a difference in my life. The first one, I've told several of you, I wrestle with pornography. And the thing that got me over it was seeing how Jesus loved the Father. And I knew I loved God. And Jesus, when he loved the Father, did he do what he wanted? No, he did what who wanted? The Father. And so it was more about the love for God than it was the thou shalt not that got me free from that. Another one has been more recently at the church. We started this church a few years back, and I have a tendency to hold on to things tightly. Because I can do them pretty well. I've done them a while now. And God brought me under conviction from the life of Jesus and learning from him that I have to start releasing them. Because he released things to 12 absolutely horrible disciples. And they're the reason we're here. And if Jesus can release it to absolutely horrible disciples, I can release it to pretty good disciples. And watch them do things differently. And watch what God does. And those kind of little things have happened as I'm yoked with Jesus and I'm learning from him. And part of me looks forward to the other things he's going to teach me as I'm yoked to him. The other ways I go, I really don't. Thank you very much, because none of those are fun. But the thing I do know is I've got to be yoked to him if I'm going to know rest for my soul. And he's gentle and humble in heart. He's not the one that goes, see? He's the one who goes, come on. And we go with him. And then in Matthew 11:29-30, he goes, you'll find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy, my burden's light. Do we make it harder than it is to follow Jesus? Yes. I mean, if somebody asked you, the yoke of Jesus, is it easy or hard? A lot of times we go, it's easy, and we know we're lying. We wanted to sound holy, but the truth was we don't feel that at times. I think we make it harder than it is. Jesus' highest invitation to people was to come and be with me. If you look at the progress of his invitations in the Bible, it's like, come and see, come and follow, and then come and be with me. And the invitation he's given you with the being yoked to him, to know his rest, is his yoke is light when you come and you are simply with him, period. My son Jonathan, one time, he was horrible going to bed. Any of your kids horrible going to bed? Good. Sorry. It's one of those things, misery loves company. Man, it was terrible. I mean, and he was one of these, we tried reading to him, and after about the 30th book, he'd ask for another one. We're like, forget it. So we tried to scream, and he wouldn't scream. He'd just lay there and stay awake. And then even as he grew older, I remember one time when he was about 6, 7 years old, I walked into his room, and I'm checking on the boys at night, and he's awake. He's been in there 3 hours. I go, John, what are you doing? He goes, I'm just talking to God. Like, what are you talking to him about? You got to cover yourself, right? And he goes, I was just asking him how his day was. I walked out of the room and I'm in tears. Because he captured something about being with Jesus I missed. Because when I go, I've got my list. And I've got to get through my list. Because if I don't get through my list, I can't do my day. And he understood at 6, 7 years old that it was more important just to spend time with him than it was to ask anything. And maybe I need to capture that more to know his yoke is easy rather than burdensome. Maybe I need to do that more. The key is, as we know him and work with him, the yoke becomes easy. The burden becomes light. It fits right. That's it. Many of you remember Angeline that was here. She was a founding member of Renew Church and all that. She died. It's been a year and a half, year ago, right at a year, not quite. She always used to say these shoulders, I don't know how much more these shoulders could take. And we used to try to tell her, give it to Jesus. She was a follower of Jesus, but she liked to take people's problems. You know what? She doesn't have to anymore. She's with Jesus. But maybe you're at the point where you're carrying burdens you don't need to. Jesus is the one with an easy yoke. He wants us to come and to be with him, to submit to him, and to know his rest, period. I want to close out with the translation of this passage from the book. It's a paraphrase of the Bible called The Message. And I think Eugene Peterson captures the essence of this verse when he says this: are you tired, worn out, burned out on religion? Come to me, get away with me, and you'll recover your life. Have you ever felt like you lost your life? I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me, work with me, watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I don't really know what that means, but I want to explore it. Maybe that's a conversation to have with God. God, what's an unforced rhythm of grace? That might be one to have. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll live. Listen to this. You'll learn to live freely and lightly. You live like that, you think your neighbor's going to ask you what's up? You think your wife's going to ask you what's changed? I guarantee it. Friends, maybe you're not a believer, someone who's come to Christ. Maybe you're here because you're just overwhelmed with this world. And the thing I want to tell you is when you come to Jesus, you can know real rest, and you'll never know it outside of him. Maybe you're a Jesus follower and you've become weary along the way. And it's time to recapture what it means to really submit to his yoke, and to be with him, and to learn from him. To maybe talk with him about those unforced rhythms of grace that are so foreign to you. And for him to give you that rest for your soul. His word doesn't lie. It's there in him, and only in him. Let's pray.